we're back here. Main event, second hour. Don't forget, live on YouTube, TME Media AZ. I'm Stephen McCollum, your humble host. Then you've got Dale Hellestrey, 17-year NFL veteran, 3-time Super Bowl champion, and then now we are joined by multiple championships out there. 2026 IFL champion. Here are the Arizona Rattlers. Kevin Guys joining us as well. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing great today, man. So, Dale's number one question. Dale, I'll let you ask it here.
Well,
Your question.
I just wondered, you couldn't come on till Friday because you celebrated all week long?
Man, I had to do player exits, coaches exits. I had all those meetings. I had to get them out of the building.
Well, let's start here. I know Steve showed up to a lot of games and watched your journey and all that. You had to go on the road to win this championship. Every game was on the road. Just tell us how satisfied you are, especially with the way last season ended, coming back and getting the championship.
Yeah, I think that's where it starts, right? We had that fiasco at the end of the season last year, and just left there really upset. You know, we had you could appeal the game and then the league wouldn't go along with it, but they did admit that they were wrong on the call, and but that was a hard pill to swallow, and what I did is I needed a mental break because I was ready to choke somebody out, and I went to Kansas to watch my son play college football, and I went and got an Airbnb for 2 months. I actually got more work done up there because nobody can walk in my office and bother me. But I just spent the off season getting myself in shape. I lost like 36 pounds. I got myself in the right mindset. We had, while I was in Kansas, we were having player personnel meetings daily, along with selling on the business side. But I wanted to make sure we got the right guys in the locker room, and we worked really hard at that as a staff, and we flipped almost 75% of our roster over from last year, and really got a lot of people out and a lot of new people in, and we knew we were going to take some little lumps along the way, and we just at one point I think we were 7-5, and then we racked off like 7 wins in a row, and I guess the satisfying part was as a coach, you get to watch the film, and you can see the teams. And every week, those coaches polls would come out, and they would have us ranked 4th and 5th and 6th, and and I'm sitting here going, we'll beat the hell out of 99% of these teams if we once we get going here. And sure enough, we got to the playoffs, and we knocked off number 3, number 2, number 1. We're the first team in the history of the league to knock off both number 1 seeds in the playoffs. So it was pretty. I was pretty satisfied at the end. Players deserve all the credit. They put the work in all year and bought in, and really happy where the organization ended up.
It's fascinating because halfway through the season, all the home games we were able to come over and cover for you guys. I looked at Dale was asking me about it being there in person, and I told him, I said, man, I think the winner's coming out of the East this year. Just the way the Eastern Division was playing. And then as it went on, I started going, hey, Dale, this defense is something to pay attention to. And I always caveat it with IFL standards, for the defense there. Your defense just got better and better and better. Ended up being, I believe, the number 1 defense in the league on that. And that just led you to and rode you to this championship, in my opinion. Nothing against the offense there, but that defense on that. And it was all new guys until Merriweather came back, 8 games into the season, I think, or something.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was all young guys. McKee wins Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie. On top of that, I mean, just talk about the growth of that defense throughout that year to set you up, because defense isn't something people talk about in these indoor leagues.
Well, one thing I do that's pretty unique as a coach is, I call the plays on both sides of the ball. And, we were so young at the beginning of the season. We came out home opener and got after San Diego, who wound up being the number 1 seed in the West. And we beat them pretty good at home in home opener. Then we went to Indiana and played the Freight, and we got our tails handed to us, and and then a week later, no, 2 weeks later, after 2 more games, I decided, I was like, you know what, I need to be more hands-on with the defense. So I actually, for the first time since 2010, I let young Peyton Riggs call the offense for 8 games, and I wanted to get hands-on with the defense, and between myself and Coach Jernigan and Coach Winfrey, we worked on the defense and really got them in a spot where we were playing some really good football. And this game is a possession game. It's not field position like it is in the outdoor game. So it's a possession game, more like basketball. And so this game is about getting stops. And so our defense really got better as the year went on. We added some leadership about halfway through, brought Merriweather back. He and his wife were she was having a baby, and so we were able to get him back about mid-season, and then we also brought Dobbs back in the secondary, and both those guys were really good leaders, and everything just kind of fell into place defensively. And then everybody started talking about our defense, but everybody forgot about our offense. I wound up taking the offense back over with about 4 games before playoffs because I wanted to make sure we had the right mentality going into the playoffs, and not that Coach Riggs was not doing a good job. Just I like to be hard on the players, and I wanted them in the right mindset going into the playoffs, but everybody talks about our defense, but we finished third in the league in scoring offense. So when you look at, I've always said this about football teams: if you ever want to know who's going to have a real shot at winning the championship, just look at the point differential between the offense and the defense, and that will tell you who really are the best teams. And we were first in the league in point differential between what our defense was giving up per game and what our offense was scoring. So I felt very confident going into the playoffs, and we just got we got on the bus headed to Vegas, and I just knew we were winning that game. I had no doubt walking into that building that we were going to beat them that day. And our defense came out and got to stop first possession of the game, and then our offense, took over, and we just kind of controlled the game throughout the game, and then we'd already beaten San Diego, who was the number 1 seed, twice in regular season, and then all the negative stuff comes out. Oh, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's not. My message to the team was, it's not if you're better than them, And we went over there and got after them, and we really that score looked closer than what it really was.
They came
we
back
controlled
at the
that
end,
game in San Diego, yeah. And so we controlled that game throughout the whole game, and then going into Tucson, I mean, we're since I've been the head coach of the Rattlers, we're 9-0 against Green Bay, and I was just like, you know what, we're going to beat them too, and we were just confident throughout the whole playoffs, and we just carried ourselves a certain way, and it wasn't from an arrogant standpoint; it was just business-like, and we got everybody in the right mindset, and that's the way we approached it, and our guys got it done.
All right, so knowing you for as long as I've known you, you made it seem pretty simple while you're talking about it. Yeah, I gave up the play calling offensively. How hard was that, number one? How hard was it not to second guess play calls, things that the young kid did, full well knowing he's growing into this job, but still, it's your job. How hard was that for you personally?
Well, I mean, I think it was harder on him than me. Because I'm terrible at it. I mean, every time he'd make a call, I'd be on the headset. I'm going like, "What the hell are you calling?"
Well, really quick, I have a story on this because Coach Guy in the press conferences, it's an emotion, whether win or lose, he just emotionally just says stuff. And after one of the games, he was like, "We're running too much left and right," and because he was calling those play calls. Next game, all of a sudden, I don't think I saw a left or right play call or anything like that. So it was funny how Coach Guy does do that type of work and how it's still integral into that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to that just stuck with me this year with you saying that after that game. And then just next week, it was no left to right plays. I don't think the whole game.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with Coach Riggs. It had nothing to do with Coach Riggs at all. He has got an awesome mind for this game, and he's very bright. He grew up. It's Curtis Riggs' son. He grew up around his daddy. His daddy was very successful. And he's going to be very successful. And but it was more about me. I was just like, you know what? I'm big on being physical and imposing our will on other teams. And we needed to get to that point, and we weren't getting there fast enough, and I was frustrated, but we racked off 7 in a row at the end, and I was very, it's very pleasing at the end, but I made the big guy happy, Ron Schertz. It all starts at the top, and
Yeah.
A lot of smiles on him,
he
his
loves
face after that championship. I saw him in the crowd there, and big old smile from him. So
he loves.
So tell me this, Coach. Again, known you for a long time. Everybody knows this in football. Quarterback, you have to have a quarterback to have a chance. Now, does he have to be the best in the league? Not necessarily, but you have to have a quarterback. How did you hone in on Myler, and how did you get him here, and why him?
Well, the story's been repeated over and over again because, Green Bay really was upset that when he left for free agency. And I'm like, that's what free agency's for, is for these players to go test the waters and change their scenery. But he texted me on the first day of training, of free agency. And I had no idea I was going to be in the quarterback market. And Dalton Snead, who's been our quarterback the last 2 years and led us to a championship in 24, he texted me the day before free agency and said, "Hey, Coach, my wife's pregnant, and I think it might be time to get on with life." And, and it kind of caught me off guard. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a few days and just see if he's panicking because this is their first child, and see if he comes around, wants to play. And, but about 3-4 days later, nothing had changed. And so I didn't even respond to Max for like a couple of days. And I was a little, I'll be frank, I was a little weary of picking him up out of free agent, not because I didn't think he was a good player, but on the east side, they just play a bunch of zone. Okay. And you come over to the west and you see all kind of variations of defenses and man coverage and blitzing. And sometimes those numbers that they throw out stat wise are misleading. I just feel like the West, if you look, the West has won the championship every year. We've went to 2 conferences. Okay. So I didn't know. And, I went and watched some film on him. Then I decided to call him back and we brought him in. Well, we didn't think we were getting Drew Powell back either. The doctor had told us he was going to be out for a year. And so, I was like, well, I better start, chasing this Max kid or we may not have a veteran quarterback in here. Well, then right before the season started, Doc clears Drew. So we decided to bring Drew back and let him compete. And, Max is coming off a year where he was MVP. And I'm sure me telling him that he had to compete in camp was probably new for him. And so, but I told him, I said, that's the only way we do it here. I don't care who you are. You can lead us to the championship this year, and then next year you're still going to have to come back and compete in camp. And so we brought him in, and he struggled, with the offense. Not really with the offense. He struggled with our defense in training camp, and Drew did look better in training camp. But I decided to go with Max because we had signed him first out of free agency, and he struggled. And I'll be frank with you, he's a Midwest guy, and they're, if you've been around Midwest people, they're really laid back. And then here I come, 4th and 1 from Alabama, and I think I scared the hell out of him, And so that was one reason I decided to put Riggs in there at offense too, because they were both 2 Midwest guys. I was like, let them, swap kisses with each other and see if they can get on the same page. But but he was. I knew if we were going to get to where we wanted to go, we had to get him in there. And once we put him back in, he looked like an MVP the rest of the season.
So real quick, because I've heard you say it before. So also to redo it for me, but also the lay people out there. Most people are going to go, oh, so one conference runs zone, one conference runs man. What's the difference? You still got to throw the football. What? Give us what difference that makes to you.
Well, when you're talking about a 50-yard field and you're playing teams that play cover 3 every play, you just sit there and check it down, and they play that bend but don't break. But I've never bought into that philosophy because you just get bent right over the goal line. And so, these quarterbacks would just throw check downs all the way down the field and get down there inside the 5 and then run the ball or whatever and get in the end zone. And, we run a philosophy here where we're going to try to stop you at whatever part of the field, from goal line to goal line, and we're really aggressive and we blitz and play a bunch of variations off our man and zone blitz schemes, and but we've always pressure, pressure, pressure. Where at East, you go to East. I mean, if the linebacker blitzes 3 times a game, it would shock me. Okay, they ought to put a line on that in Vegas. Because they don't blitz that much. So but you come out here and you're going to see that in the West, and I just think defenses are just way more advanced, and they're a little bit caught in the old days in the East, and that's why they're not winning when we get in the playoffs. You get to the West team, and really the Western Conference Championship game. And I thought this year the first round between us and Vegas was the championship game. I said whoever wins this game between us and Vegas is going to the show in Tucson and probably going to win it all. And if you go look at the point differential, we were first, Vegas was second, and I think that holds up every year.
One thing I noticed, and you might poo-poo this, but I'll just throw it out there. One thing I know, like when you played Fisher Freight at home, you struggled against Fisher Freight. It was a close loss there at home, and then you talked about your struggles on the road there. But even with Green Bay, standing there on media day and walking around, it's just those East Coast teams, at least that I saw in person, they're just big teams, right? Not that you're not big, but there's it's almost like there's a size differential, and then you have the speed side of it. Is that indicative of? I know Vegas isn't huge in terms of that either. And San Diego, besides Nate Davis, who's bigger than everybody on the planet as a quarterback, is that something that's in this league where just the different divisions are built those ways, or is that just a dumb observation I made over time?
Well, if you were at the press conference, of the national championship game, their players were talking about how much beer they drink up there, so that might be why they're a little bigger.
Well, I talked about that really quick. Is you are very matter of fact, and I didn't know how to phrase. I was trying to figure out how to phrase it without being insulting because I don't want people to think I'm like bashing you. But you're very matter of fact. Like you got up there and you're like, we show up on time. Our players work hard. We do the same thing. Everything. And then, like you said, they were like, hey, we drink a lot of beer, we have fun. That one guy was like, oh, my hair, and it's like business, and then it's business but fun on the others. But I've noticed that with a lot of teams around the league with you guys and stuff like that. So it is funny how you bring that up. But that kind of goes to the speed side of it. It just, you guys look, you started that game, I'm going to say terribly with the deuce, and then the way they went down and scored, you're down 9-0 right off the bat. Momentum's in their way. And they were bigger, but then it just, your speed kind of just took over as that game went on, in my opinion, and kind of got you there at the end. And it's just, I've noticed that between the East and West, over the last couple of years. And it's because you talk about the defensive side, which brings me to, I usually leave the offensive line questions to Dale, but he wasn't as ingrained with it. You had to make an offensive line move, after the New Jersey game because your guy got hurt again. And then you made another move where you moved Parks outside and a new center in there as the season went on. That helped. How did that open up your offense and get kind of Max Myler and Drew Powell when he was in there playing? How did that kind of help that offense open up with those moves that you made?
Yeah, we got into some injuries in mid-season. That's why we dropped a couple there, and but we went out and picked up Kimbrough, as a free agent and brought him in. And once Mike Brown, who would have been all league center, and he was a big human being. Okay. So, when he got hurt, he tore his Achilles, I believe, up in Jersey when we were up in Jersey playing. And it took us a few weeks to get the right guy in there. So we moved Jake Parks from guard to center, and he got some film of him playing center. But we knew we were going to be a better team if we got another center in here and moved out the guard. And once we did that, everything settled down and we got hot and we started winning. But you win the game in the trenches, no doubt. And then, defensively, we were told all year long by the media, who really, doesn't have a clue when it comes to football. And, they were telling us how we needed to get better at nose. And I was like, me and Coach Jernigan I kept tweaking him in meetings and coaches meetings, like, hey man, I hear we're not good enough at nose. And, he'd get all cranky and be like the angry crab. And, and he would, get frustrated, but we're good enough. I'm telling you, we're good enough to win it. And I knew we were. I was just messing with them. But we had two noses. I felt like we could get it done, but we were very athletic on the edge. We had three guys that could rush. We could drop them off into coverage. We could match up with teams a lot of different ways, and that's what I was talking about. All those variations of defenses that we can throw at you, and because we could show you man, and then we could throw some zone blitz schemes at you and still pressure you, and so we just we made the changes that we needed to make as the season went on. But I will tell you, like when we got down 9-0 in the championship game, I was never concerned at all. I think our staff is the best in the business when it comes to making adjustments. And I knew the time was on our side. It happened so early in the game. I was like, we got plenty of time to come back and overcome this. And once we went in tied up at halftime, I knew that second half. I was like, hey, we're gonna figure out a way to get some separation here, and we wound up getting up 11 points. And then at that point, it was so late in the game, it was all about just managing the clock.
Yeah.
Well, knowing you, Kevin, obviously you're going to enjoy this for a little bit longer, and then it's time to move on to next season. Talk a little about, because I know you're involved heavily in the business of the IFL, and I'm seeing there's expansion franchises, things like that. What's your thoughts and the excitement level about those things that are going on?
Well, I'm very excited. I think Todd Tryon and his staff has been doing an outstanding job. Yahoo Sports came in this year and partnered with the whole league, and I think we did 119 games between Yahoo Sports and Overnight, and Overnight bought the secondary package of the league, and they just went through and the owners made a commitment to growing the business and growing the league, and we had some really good numbers. I'm never satisfied. I'm used to working for Ron Schertz. Anytime you start throwing stats at him, he'll tell you you're just first of a bunch of losers. So I don't. My mind's trained not to look at stats. And look at numbers. But at the end of the day, it's always like, hey, we got to get better. We got to get better. And the TV obviously helps attract new ownership groups, and we're up to 18 now. We may add one or two more before next year. We're still talking to a few groups, and that could happen. But we picked up Athens, Georgia, Austin, Texas. We picked up Little Rock, Arkansas, and Savannah, Georgia. Which right now I'm Savannah, Georgia was really a market that I had my eye on. I've been talking to some of those owners over there, and I still may invest. They're trying to get me to invest in that team. I still may do it. I love the Savannah market, but I got some other things that I'm trying to do too in the hockey world, and then in the real estate world and venture capital world. So I got a lot going on. I got to figure out which ones I want to do and which ones I'm not going to do. But I certainly I think the league is growing. Our plan is to cut it off at 24 teams, and then if you want to buy a team, you're going to have to come in and buy an existing team. But ownership is committed, and you can see that with the parity across the league, because the better owners you get, the better coaches they're going to hire, and it just continues to get tougher and tougher to win. And we've been able to win 2 out of the last 3, and we're the only team to win multiple championships since we came in the league in 17. And we've played for the championship, I think, five times, I believe. I know we lost against Massachusetts in 21, and then we lost to Sioux Falls in 19. But so we're 3-2 in those games since joining the IFL. But we've had a good run in the indoor football league, and I'm extremely happy. I mean, we've done it in the 2 biggest leagues in the arena indoor space, and the arena league when they were on top, and now the indoor football league is on top. We've done it in both, and we're the only ones to be able to do that, and so I'm very proud of that. I tell you another thing that got our players in the right mindset when we were down in Tucson was, I don't know if you went to the awards banquet and the press conference, but it was like the Green Bay banquet. Yeah. Okay. And I was sitting up there just soaking it up because I knew my players were sitting over there getting pissed. I mean, they won every award that you could possibly give them, probably about 6 or 7 awards. And then, our dance team, we got first, our Sidewinders won the best dance team. And great, they deserved it, and we were happy for them. But I knew it was pissing my guys off that was all we got, right?
Yeah.
So, so I knew by the time we got to the game, we had them in the right mindset going into that game.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my last questions, was because you mentioned that after the game. I didn't go to that. We drove back up here and went back down the next day. But you mentioned that after the game. Man, it was the Green Bay Awards show last night, and we had to sit there and watch it. And, that's got to be the most motivating thing on the planet, right, to see that with the opponent you're about to play. But my last question for you, I asked you this after the game, and I want to ask it to you now that you've settled down. It was right after the game. But you came in, first time we saw you this year, first home game against San Diego. You guys won that game, and you went into there, and you had a little chip on your shoulder, and you said, I was needled all off season, and there's going to be consequences for that this year, and we're here coming for it. And at the end of the year, there's going to be consequences. And, of course, you raised the trophy up at the end of the year. So that was your motivation. You talked about going and watching your son play in Kansas last season. Got healthy, kind of got all that done. Well, now that you've won the championship, 2 out of the last 3, we know you're not going to settle. But where do you find the motivation going into next season, this offseason? You have a young team. I don't know the contract situations, who can come back, who isn't. It's tough to that. But where do you find the motivation going into next year for an encore to this season?
Well, let's go back and touch on that needling behind the scenes because, if you know me, anybody that says anything or pokes the bear, I don't forget that stuff. I remember it because I'm a competitor, so I'm like, oh, this person thinks this, and but I listen in these leagues, and not just our league, but in any of these leagues, there is always envy and jealousy when there's a team that's constantly on top, and they're just constantly trying. I mean, you could travel around the United States, and everybody hates Alabama because they won for so long under Nick Saban, right?
Dale and the Cowboys in the '90s, another example. Yeah,
100%. I mean, I didn't like them back then either, So, but but at the end of the day, it just goes with the territory, and there's a lot of every time you turn around, they think you're trying to get some kind of advantage just because you ask a question, and but there's a lot of needling, and there was a few people that I felt like was trying to poke the bear a little bit, and I even had one coach running around trying to tell all these little podcasts that might have 5 followers that KG's lost he's lost his juice in the league and all this stuff, and look, I don't even look at it like that. Once I sign my name on something, I always said I'm gonna sign my work with excellence, and I wanted to see this league grow, and I've done. I feel like I've done a lot for this league, helping recruit ownership groups. I brought in the business department that put a lot of money in the league's pocket, and I brokered the deal between Tucson and the league for the championship game for 3 years. So I feel like I've done a lot for the league on the business side, not just what's been going on the football side. So. We certainly, so just being up in Kansas for those months and just thinking about this, I was able to get my mind right and get away from everybody. And then, during the season, we had a couple of incidents where me and the Vegas coach, got into it during the game, and that went viral. And, and then I got fined the most. That was crazy. I got fined the most, and I didn't even start to sit, he put his hands on me first. Yeah. And I got fined 5 times what he did. Okay. So, that's what I'm talking about. The needling, like, people just trying to keep you upset. And, and finally I just said, you know what, we're going to go beat the hell out of everybody. And, that was it. But as far as contracts go next year, I always treat it the same. I treat it as if nobody's coming back, and we're going to go recruit and get the most competitive roster as possible. And the guys that decide they want to come back, if they want to be back, they can come back. That's a policy of mine. If you win the championship, I'll give them an opportunity to come back and compete and try to repeat. But if they don't want to come back and they want to test free agency, that's their choice. I want what's best for my players. And, it's a short career. So I tell them, go do what's best for you. We're not too worried about it either way. We're the Arizona Rattlers, and we're going to get the best players and best product through recruiting. We're really good at identifying players. And, I expect for us to have a very, very competitive training camp next season.
I got 2 quick questions for you, then we'll let you go. You spent a lot of time with us, and we certainly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Number one, are you and the Vegas coach, you got VRBO planned? You guys going on vacation? Because there's no incidents in the playoff game, were there?
No. There was no room for them to talk at all in that playoff game. We were getting after them, So, but I listen. We don't hang out. We don't talk. I mean, it's I'm not going to sit here and say he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. It just we don't see eye to eye. And I saw what I wanted to see when we got in that pushing match. When he pushed me and I came back and pushed him, I saw the look. I saw what I needed to see in his eyes when I pushed him back, and that's all I needed to know.
Great. Hey, that's the Kevin guy I've known for a long time. And last question, we'll let you go. You said last year you went and watched your son play and just got away from everything. Same plan this year. How is Cody doing, and what's going on there?
100%. It's my 25th anniversary, so me and the wife here we're leaving tomorrow. We're going to Hills Country in Texas, man. We're going to Fredericksburg.
Oh, love it there.
Yeah, flying into Austin, and we're going to hang out there for a week. But he plays his first game this year in San Angelo at San Angelo State. So they're playing against San Angelo State. So once we're done with our trip, we're going over there and watch him play. He's doing well. Right now he's QB2 as a redshirt freshman, and he's also going to be the guy that holds and on extra points and field goals. So, he's progressing nicely, and I'm happy with the way he's progressing. So, listen, he's ahead of every quarterback that was there. When he got there, they went out and got a quarterback out of the transfer portal from Iowa State that transferred in. And he's a sharp young man, and he came in and he's going to be the starter, and then but when you're sitting at that QB2, you're one play away. You know how it works, and so so anything can happen, production, injury, whatever, and or you just going outperforming. I think Cody's growing. Again, I'm happy with the way he's growing. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and the pride of Williamsfield High School out here in the Valley, just so if people didn't know that, it's where he played here locally and everything. So,
yeah, no, I mean he's so we'll go up. First 2 games we're going in to see him next week, and then the next week we're going to fly into Kansas to see him play. And then they have a bye week, and after that bye week, Kathy and I go up for 2 months for the rest of the season and watch those games. What's great about that MIAA conference is all those games are within 5 hours, so it's easy to bounce around and get to, and it gives me a little bit of a break too. I love being out of the office where I could get a lot of work done and just be by myself and go. I work a lot faster that way.
Do the other coaching staffs, if they're starting to struggle, do they look at you and go, "Hey, how would you get out of this?"
Get out of what?
Oh, just if they get into a situation and they're curious on another outside eyeball, do they call you up and say, "Cody, go grab your dad. We need him to come help us out here and tell us what he sees."
What's funny is I get a lot of questions through Cody on his teammates having questions about agents. I was like, well, I'm the wrong guy to ask because I can't stand them.
I negotiate with them.
Yeah. Really quick, we got actually ironically on that, we got a comment on the thing from Ethan saying you should be the coach of the Cardinals. With your mentality and everything.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, I've had my opportunities. Through the years to move to different leagues. I've had 4 opportunities for assistant coaching jobs in the NFL. 1, opportunity to be a head coach in Canada. And me and Ron's got a partnership. I told him I would be here to the end. It was great for my family. I'm in charge of my own schedule. I got numerous things going on outside and of football, business wise. And, I enjoy it here in Arizona, and, those NFL coaches and Canadian coaches, they get fired too often. And the way I see it is I like to control my own fate. And, that was one of the issues I had about Canada was, they had a GM, they wanted to pick my players. And I was like, well, I've always been successful picking my own players, and I don't even know you. So that just wasn't going to be a fit for me. And so, so I enjoy being able to have final say over the roster. Now I have it over the business side. I love building the relationships in the community. Community's been great. But I love it here in Arizona. And I think when Ron decides he's done, I'm going to be done. And, Kathy and I sold Tucson last year. That was another thing we got off our plates. And we owned that team for 7 years and we sold it. And I'm just getting to a position where I really don't have to work anymore. And, but I do this because it's fun and I enjoy the relationship with the players. And, so I'm gonna keep doing that as long as I can. And I hope Ron wants to do it as long as he can. But if he decides to move on, then that's it. I just don't know if I would trust any other ownership group. And me and Ron are just, he's a man's man. I'm a man's man. And we run it that way. That's our culture. And I just don't know if I could, at this point in my career, go to another team and trust the structure of any other organization. I think ours is the best. And we spent 17 years building it. And, I feel like we've built a dynasty here in the desert.
Kevin, as always, we appreciate your time. Let's do a little more often and have a great off season.
I got it. Appreciate you guys having me on.
You got 8. We'll see you next year. And next year I'll be a little more forceful. Get you on. I kept telling Jay, like, I got to get coach on. And with your practice schedule and stuff. So next year we'll work something out and we'll talk more about your strategy of onside kicks that everybody always gets upset with you about. So,
and I'll make sure I'll go in and tell my staff today that you think that the East teams are bigger than ours.
Yeah. I walked over to that Green Bay on that media day and I was standing next to those guys because they were just big dudes. And that doesn't mean that you guys didn't control them or anything. And I was actually joking around with them, like, what do you guys eat in Green Bay up there? You guys are pretty big. So, yeah, use it as motivation. I'm more than happy to give you that motivation, Coach. Hey, we'll see you next time. Have a good offseason, and we'll see you next year, all right?
Thank you, guys.